Hi, everybody. David Noor back with you with my business partner, Jen Courts, for another episode of our Intelligent Growth Live. Hello, Jen.
Hey, Nor, it looks like you're not at home this week. So where are you?
Right. I have the great background. I'm actually joining from Indonesia. Came out here to see our daughter who's studying abroad in New Zealand and Australia, and did a little side trip to Bali. But these series are important enough that I thought I'd want to join and make sure we continue this great mini series we've started. And I look forward to being back home in Atlanta, hopefully for the next episode.
Nice. Well, it's glad you're here.
Glad to be here. For our audience, if you have missed our previous episodes, we're in midst of a mini series on really the challenges of the revenue kind of leadership. We started with the chief revenue officer. We've captured and we've covered the chief marketing officer, and really excited that Jen and I are going to talk about another topic that we're both really passionate about, which is really the experience that many organizations create for what we believe to be their biggest asset, which is really their customer relationships. And increasingly, we're seeing this role of a chief customer officer. And there's several different, as we'll talk about, references to it. Some call it a chief experience officer. But in essence, a single role, a critical role in the organization that, as we'll talk about in a second, really owns that end-to-end customer experience journey. And again, it's an important one that we believe increasingly more organizations are paying attention to. And we believe it's a critical one, particularly in a recurring revenue business model, as we'll talk about. Jen, your take on the chief customer officer role.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've found through our work with many of our clients is that the customer experience needs to be intentional, and it needs to carry through from the marketing to sales efforts. And then once they buy, incorporating sort of that onboarding and that customer success and helping them realize value. So it really needs to be planned out and intentional. And many companies are not focused on that. They're more focused on the sales marketing side.
And so we'll definitely talk about that. And again, we want the audience to really think about the end-to-end experience. As Jen mentioned, when first marketing reaches a ideal prospect, we actually like to call them an ideal relationship profile, all the way through the sale. Like, we coach many clients that the relationship really starts when they buy. And then certainly we're going to talk a lot about it in this episode after they buy. What does that handoff look like? How do we really help the end customer adopt, embrace, implement our solution, create material impact in their business? And only when we do that have we earned the opportunity for them to become not just satisfied with what we do, hopefully more than just advocates of what we do, but really evangelists for what we do. And we'll talk again more about all of this shortly. So we're fairly active on the various social channels. Obviously, this is going out through LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We encourage you to jump in. Jen and I also are very active in our own private online community called the Noor Forum. If you haven't had a chance to join us there, noorgroup.com/forum. We post regular articles, regular perspectives. Jen runs a RevOps group there. I share the Noor New Nuggets. So we'll hope you'll join us again in the forum for copies of this presentation and additional resources that we'll post exclusively in that arena. noorgroup.com/forum. So to get us kind of kick us off, we talk a lot about the subscription economy. And we believe in any kind of a recurring revenue business model, the organization's biggest asset, as I alluded to earlier, is its really relationships. And if you think about a transactional sale, you kind of work through a prospect until they're sold. And in some ways, you're kind of done, right? Thank you for the transaction. And we deliver value, we get paid for it, and we're done. In a recurring revenue model, you have to earn that right on an ongoing basis. So by definition, you're going to have to double down on those relationships. So not only they'll renew, but hopefully you'll build a deeper, richer, more meaningful relationship with them. In the process, you'll create barriers to entry for competitors. In the process, you'll deepen the value that you create for that client. And particularly when it comes to how are they better off because of you, you have both qualitative and quantitative information to share in here's the problems they were having before they met us, here's the solution that we brought to the table, and here's how their business and ideally their customers' customers are better off because of what we bring. Jen, you've participated in both. You've been around highly transactional businesses and you've been around recurring revenue business models. Talk about the biggest difference in your lens about in those two models.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the transactional business model is very siloed, if you will, and it's an exchange of goods, and it's kind of one and done, and you don't really need to be viewed anything more than being a vendor. With the subscription economy and with the subscription model, it really is not only continuing to provide value for that person, but as you mentioned, deepening that relationship and ensuring that you're viewed as a partner in their success as well as their customers' success. So be a customer of their customers and help them realize value at kind of two levels down, and continue to provide that value in a way that they see you not just as a vendor and as a point solution, if you will, but as someone who can actually get them to the next level and get them to a greater level of success.
And in this subscription economy, and we've been blessed to work with some really mature companies in mature industries, we're seeing even these mature organizations look for opportunities for recurring revenue models. Look for opportunities to do more than just sell a license or an individual experience, but really create an ongoing relationship. So we often talk to clients about what are you doing to reinvent your relationships and create these recurring revenue models in the process. And this is evident by our annual Relationship Economics Summit, where we gather a very broad spectrum of C-suite executives. And this past year, we talked a lot about this customer lifecycle journey maturity model. And at the moment, we have a global research project going on where we're asking, chief marketing officers and chief revenue officers and chief customer officers in this infinity loop. If you're able to join us, and see the slides in this infinity loop, where do you believe as an organization you thrive? Where do you believe you're really strong? Where do you believe, we've got this part down? And conversely, if I were to flip the coin, where are you struggling? Where are you? It doesn't have to be broken, but where are you not hitting your strides? And we're not, in our research, we're not looking for the us and them. We're not looking for finger pointing. We're not looking for, we closed the business, but those no good people over at customer success couldn't implement if they tried. That's not it. It's really looking for opportunities to discuss and really highlight we challenges, we opportunities. How do we as a team, as an organization, really help our clients align the way they buy with the way we sell? And again, not just the selling part. As you can see, beyond awareness, engagement, evaluation, and purchase, really adoption, impact, and evangelizing is what's really critical. Jen, your comments on the lifecycle journey maturity model.
Well, as you mentioned, that we're looking for we challenges, and this entire infinity loop is kind of like a relay race, and it's a baton pass between each one of these phases, and making sure that it's smooth and frictionless for the end user as well as the internal team is really important. So the client or your prospective customer knows that they're not getting a different experience depending on which department that they're dealing with. So it's one unified front, if you will, and allowing them to know what's coming and know what every interaction would be like with your company. And so it's really important that the left side of this infinity loop, which is more marketing sales, matches what the right side is, which is more sales customer success. And that all three of those departments share information to make sure that they know what's happening at every phase in that person's journey.
And again, that comment of they're sharing information so they know what's happening with the experience couldn't be more critical in not just optimizing each of these individual phases, but as we increasingly see in working with global clients, the handing of the baton, the handoff from one phase to the next is incredibly critical. I checked into a really nice hotel, and the driver hands us off to the bell guys who bring the luggage in, who take us to the front desk, and we kind of check in and we get our keys, and then the luggage is brought to the room. Can you imagine if the luggage was dropped off at the pool, or you know, the keys were issued to the wrong room? You would think, what the hell? And why can't they get their act together? So it's amazing how often that's exactly what's happening in many organizations. The function does its job, but it's disconnected from the rest of the organization in terms of creating that great experience. And those examples are all around us every single day. And I don't want to go on a tangent, but I've always believed we don't need shows like The Undercover Boss for executives to realize what's really happening in their organizations. What's sad to see is how many executives are disconnected from the edge of where their business creates value. So I see the airline executive on my video when I talk about how great his airline is. I'm wondering, how often does he actually fly his own airline? Or how often does the executives of the hotel stay in their own properties without being treated as leadership royalty, and really experience the customer experiences their staff, their processes, their products or services create for their guests? So this customer lifecycle journey, we think, could be invaluable if it becomes an organizational lens. So Jen, you brought up marketing and sales is heavily involved on the left-hand side of this customer lifecycle journey. It seems like customer success and the customer experience is the prevailing kind of thought process on the right-hand side.
It is, yes. And because as we've spoken about and as we've trained our clients, that the purchase or the relationship really starts after they make their purchase. And so it's the customer success side of this is the clean handoff. So once they've signed their paperwork, they know what's coming next, and then also quickly delivering on the things that they were promised in that sales process, and helping them realize those quick wins, but then also deepening that impact and broadening the scope of what your solution can do for that client. And looking for ways to continue to provide value is something that customer success can do really well. And so it's not just come in and solve the one problem, but as you get to know the client, understand their environment, understand their ecosystem, and make suggestions on other things that they could do either with your solution or potentially efficiencies that you've seen in other places be applied. And then that again increases the value that you bring to that relationship and allows them to see that you are in it to actually help them versus just provide that one isolated solution. And one of the things with this entire infinity loop, and we've talked about it in previous episodes, is the 360-degree view of these customers and even your prospects. Like every department needs to have that visibility into how they've engaged, what they've like consumed as far as content goes, and what have their interactions been. Because to your point and your example with the hotel, you don't want the left hand doing something completely different than the right hand, and you don't want a really disconnected experience. So knowing and having that information surface level and readily accessed for all of these teams is really, really important. And that level of information and that granularity of detail will help customer success really fine-tune and personalize what this experience can be from the sales to the customer success handoff.
I love that, and it's again is a critical one, as we'll discuss in detail. So for our audience, we've referenced this as well. PwC does an annual global CEO survey, And we're fascinated by continued data points that we're finding that highlights threats to the top line. In this uncertain time, increasingly more CEOs are worried about threats to the top line revenue. And when it comes to revenue, when it comes to growth, it's very easy to talk about net new, logos or new customers or what new business we've closed. One of the areas we continue to see ignored or, again, less invested in are things like churn. And we'll talk about some of these metrics. Things like NPS that tell you what's happening, but really don't allow you to dig into why it's happening. And increasingly going beyond root causes of something, which is often a lagging indicator, right? You're looking at, your KPIs of what happened last month, the last quarter, to how do we look at leading drivers? How do we start looking and anticipating that customer hasn't attended any of our training, hasn't really brought us in to help them integrate our solution? There is no way they're going to renew, much less grow that business with us. So what are those leading drivers that you should be thinking about in retaining and growing the existing customers? And that's something that we'll certainly talk a lot about. What we are seeing is between what we call the revenue team, between the CMO, CRO, and Chief Customer Officer, there's some critical challenges that revenue leaders face, from ownership of the customer experience, who owns that, all the way to data management and utilization. Jen referred to a 360-degree view of the customer. How do we ensure we get that and we keep that consistently, to breaking down isolation and silos and this is my sandbox, please don't mess with my sandbox. These metrics, measuring the right things and really creating course correction, insightful, data-driven course correction based on those metrics. These become kind of ongoing, and there are varying, that's what we call the customer lifecycle journey maturity model, because there are varying differences in maturity between a company that is, let's just say, is launched or gotten its first Series A venture funding versus a really mature organization that launches a new line of business or new digital or recurring revenue model way to go to market. The maturity level differs greatly. Jen, comments on these, again, ever growing list of revenue team, revenue leader challenges?
Yeah, I think a lot of these topics that we've got on the screen are really table stakes, and some of them are overlooked as the company grows and scales. The problems or challenges that these leaders are trying to address shift, and some of these, like measuring the right things or actually being intentional with the customer experience, may fall to the wayside because the perception is there's a bigger problem to solve somewhere else. But these are really the table stakes in that foundation that needs to be set and consistently reinforced as companies grow and scale, because what you're doing as a Series A, B will really matter and set the stage for what you're going to be doing as a C, D, and post IPO if you go that route. So it's really important to set these up in a way that can scale and really have the culture to reinforce and grow these as the company grows. So I would definitely say that the ownership of a lot of these, it needs to be that trifecta between these three growth leader functions.
And critical, some of these things, like I said, are when you're so into the weeds, when you're so into the leaves, you can't see the branches, much less the tree, much less the forest. So agile design thinking, customer experience, driving top and bottom line, cross-functional collaboration between those three legs of the stool, commercialization of IT, or consumerization and democratization of that technology. These all become, again, ongoing challenges that many organizations face, and they ignore signs until things blow up. The other thing that doesn't help a company is this revolving door of executives in critical roles. It is very difficult for the culture to build any kind of continuity, build any kind of consistency if either leaders are looking over their shoulder to figure out when they're going to get shot next, or constantly have to integrate somebody else into the room and get them on board with what we do, how we do it, how you're going to contribute. If you think about, I often use sports analogies. The best teams are comprised of players who know each other, like each other, trust each other, and they're constantly thinking, what should I be doing? Where should I be? How do I best prepare? So when our team gets the ball or the puck or the opportunity, we make the most out of it. That's the exact same thing with a revenue team. Do we like each other? Do we trust each other? Do we work well together? Where should we be? What should we be thinking? How do we best prepare? So when we do get opportunities, we make the most of it.
Well,
Jen, any comments?
Yeah, and on that note, you mentioned it earlier that organizations need to be looking at their challenges and their growth as problems to solve. We've spoken about it in previous episodes that a company, as they grow and scale and moving towards an exit opportunity or an IPO, like one department's not going to do that. It's the whole company that gets there. Otherwise, nobody gets there. So really, when we go into some of our client organizations, when we hear it, well, they over there did this, or that other function did that, it really doesn't reinforce to us that they are looking at it as a we challenge and that they are a three-legged stool and that they do need to collaborate. And so that's one of the first things that we try and address, because it's really important to have that cross-functional collaboration and know that everybody's best intention is what's being put forward and that you're not creating unnecessary friction for the end user, much less your internal teams.
That's exactly right. And again, another reminder for leaders, your teams are watching what you do, what you say, how you carry yourself, how collaborative are you really across, and beyond your own function. So it's really critical that the leadership brand you build is one of collaborative. It's one of we challenges and we opportunities. The other thing that our research continues to show is, and we've alluded to this a couple of times, is this idea of strategic value of relationships as a massive enabler of enterprise growth. So if you think about the customer success or the customer experience, it is not a spectator sport. This is not something the CEO can do from the mahogany row or the 50th floor of the building. You've got to get on the street. You've got to go get in front of prospects and clients alike. You've got to go to the trade shows now that they're back. You've got to do the small gatherings of the C-suite, like-minded. Jen brought it up. I love when the customer success teams, the customer experience teams start to bring a really unique value add in challenges and opportunities that they've solved for other similar clients, to net new clients, to new prospects. Listen, we've seen this movie. We know what these challenges are. We've been in the pitfalls you're headed for. Let us show you how we address this, or we help this other client do it. And when you do that, and again, this also lends itself really nicely into the RevOps function, is ideally RevOps, again, is not playing catch up, is anticipating, is looking ahead, is really thinking about both where's upside potential in some of our existing customers, where are some of our customers at risk because they're simply not engaged and involved. How do we ensure we pour love and support into them, not just at renewal, but throughout that entire life cycle in a lot of what we call micro moments, micro touches, and touchstone experiences. Jen, comments?
Yeah, on that, I mean, so the customer success function, has a really unique opportunity because they're your front line. They're interacting with your customers on hopefully a daily or weekly basis. And so they gather feedback that could be really critical to inform future marketing campaigns or how the sales cycle actually works. So ensuring that your RevOps function has built in that feedback loop to the rest of the organization so that those insights aren't just isolated in the one department. It can be critical and it can inform some business learnings at an accelerated pace. And also, it's one of those functions that, well, when you check out of a hotel, for example, they ask you, how was your stay? If you give them an honest answer, the person who's getting that information may not have the authority to do anything about it, but it's the polite thing. It's the thing that they've been trained to do, is ask, how is your stay? But if those hotel operators actually took that insight and then did something with it, it could improve the stays of other people or inform their parent company of improvements that need to be made. And so by empowering that customer success function to actually listen and listen well, and then share that information across the organization in a way that it could be impactful and change future customer experiences, really is critical to differentiate yourself between your competitors, as well as those competitors that are just entering the market. And so that user journey and that user experience is really the differentiation between a lot of these companies when the features and functionalities are basically the same.
And I've always coached clients to be really concerned when those customers go away without saying anything. If they had a bad experience, you want them to say something. You need them to say something, because you cannot do something about the experiences you don't know, experiences you don't understand. But if they go away mad, if they go away less than pleased, if they go away having felt that friction, and they don't say anything, there's no way they're going to renew again in the subscription economy, in the recurring revenue model, much less deepen that relationship. So it's that relationships becomes even more critical. So when we talk about we enable intelligent and profitable growth, they're really relevant, whether, and we've alluded to some of this, whether you're expanding, your launch, your venture or private equity backed, all the way up to, path to some sort of an exit. You're integrating or you're optimizing kind of what you do across business units. We have a lot of very mature clients in very, number of mature industries. If you think of industrial manufacturing, there's M&A opportunities, and there's opportunities to really look at growth from not just product, but also product to service, or now a subscription model, a recurring revenue model. And then certainly transformation, whether you're trying to iterate, innovate, or disrupt your current business model or go-to-market strategy. This idea of intelligent and profitable growth becomes critical in that process. Nowhere is intelligent and profitable growth more valuable, more costly, more unforgiving than this idea of a customer experience. And we love cartoons, so we thought we'd start by, again, if you can see the screen, are you our new chief marketing officer? The CMO title is really outdated and obsolete. I'm the new chief growth officer. Or maybe I'm the new chief customer officer. No, wait, I'm the chief experience officer. Or is it the chief commercial officer? We're indifferent of what you call it. As I said, there's a lot of different C-suite roles that are being, thrown out there. What's critical is really elevation of that customer centricity in the culture. So we're seeing increasingly within certainly the Fortune ranked companies, you see Fortune 100, increasingly they realize that there has to be a customer advocate. There has to be customer centricity within all the functions in the organization. And as you can see, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and we're seeing increasingly this even come to middle market, as well as even some of the earlier stage companies who realize that recurring revenue model, as we've talked about, is so predicated on not just an okay experience, but an exceptional experience. And if you think about the role, we really like these three buckets of customer insights that comes from a lot of the work that Jen and her team do in analyzing the customers, looking at the market trends, looking at the digital trends that are happening, personalizing the marketing. We're huge believers that one size does not fit all. And how do I segment? How do I optimize? How do I test and learn? How do I personalize recommendations for very specific customer profiles? And then obviously customer decisioning, really understanding real-time experiences, streaming real-time customer data. All of this makes us that much more data-driven. And even Bain, who came up with the Net Promoter System. If you look at the right-hand side, the core work of the customer experience leader becomes, how do we ensure the root cause analysis, prioritizing, implementing of structural changes in the organization? So not just the sustained leadership commitment at the top, not just a reliable, trust-centric set of metrics, but in terms of feedback loop and improvements, that the checking out of the hotel example that Jen just shared, right? If somebody asks you, how was your stay? And they give that front desk person input, you have to have a mechanism for that front desk to capture that and communicate it honestly and candidly. Nobody likes, having their baby called ugly. But if room service isn't doing their job, or if food and beverage is awful, somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to capture that candidly and then be able to do something about it. And then really at the baseline, creating, employee team environment that's focused on that loyalty, on that customer centricity, and then the operational and analytics infrastructure to make sure it's consistently captured. These are just some of the insights that we've captured in the rise of this chief customer officer. Jen, I'm going to give you some time to comment on anything I've shared.
Well, I would just say that empowering the people to take the feedback and then do something with it, it's really important then to close that loop with the customer that maybe gave that feedback, to let them know we appreciate the insights that you've provided us, because it's valuable. Those data points at scale are extremely valuable to any organization. So closing that loop with the person who gave the feedback is really important. And it's not that you, like in the hotel example, they're not necessarily looking for a comp of some kind, but just a phone call from maybe the property manager of, we're so sorry your stay wasn't as exceptional as we'd want it to be. We got your feedback. Here's the changes that we've implemented. We hope you come back in the future. That alone is more than a lot of companies are doing. And that would speak volumes to the person that they actually were heard versus just randomly throwing their feedback potentially up over the wall. And so it's important to listen to both the pros and the cons. And as we've talked about, when a RevOps team starts looking at your deals and your opportunities, that maybe one, that's fantastic because that'll inform what you should be doing and doubling down on it, but also looking at reasons why you've lost. Looking at both sides is really important because they will tell you a lot about your process and what's broken or what needs to be tweaked. And so those lost reasons, capturing them and then actually doing something with them is really important, and something that the chief customer officer can own in that process, because they also are involved with renewals and upsells and cross sells. And so knowing why people are not coming back is really important, or what other features and functionality they may be looking for. How else can whatever product or service you're selling, what else can you do to help serve that customer? Or do they even know what other offerings you have? How is marketing educating them after the purchase? If they're not, that's a place that could be improved. Thoughts?
So Jen, I have a genuine and honest question of you. You and I both travel extensively. I have status on several of the hotel brands. I have status on several of the airline brands. I would literally and figuratively have an out-of-body experience if they ever called to say exactly what you just said, which is, we heard you on the nth level of survey that we sent, or the comment that you shared. Here's what we've done to fix it. Hope you'll come back and give us another chance. Why do you believe, and here's my question of you, honestly, why do you believe so many organizations fail in that feedback loop mechanism?
This is a great question. And it's one that I've thought about a lot as I've traveled and gotten those surveys as well. And I feel that it's because they don't actually incorporate that feedback into the rest of their processes. And so they gather that feedback and it's then put into a silo. And potentially one team is looking at it and that team is isolated, not off in a corner, but they're isolated in a sense that they're not involved, and that organization doesn't actually have a 360-degree view of their customer. And so they don't feel that the connectivity of the sales, marketing, and the customer success side is really important. And so they may gather it, they may read it, they may not have anybody or a process that's there to do something about it. And so then it just becomes a data point. And it's one of those metrics that they report on in a dashboard to their board or whoever they report to. And it's a feel-good metric for them. It's not one that they're actually critically looking at and doing something about.
Which lends itself really nicely to the slide that the audience may be looking at, which is the role of the chief customer officer really does vary across the organizations. In some, they're an influencer, right? Exactly what Jen alluded to. They provide the common tools, the approaches, the standards for the organization. They share the customer insights and best practices. They have a very small centralized team, and their role is predominantly to influence the customer centricity of the organization. Other places, they're absolutely a partner. They define that customer experience strategy. They partner with different functional groups or business units to prioritize that customer centricity. They direct metrics, communication, project planning. So they have small centralized team with very dedicated kind of matrix approach or matrix support of the organization. And then rarely, and Jen, your experience may be different, but rarely have I seen that the chief customer officer really be the transformer, which is they own the budget, they own resources, they prioritize decisions. They're very focused on customer-facing projects, initiatives. They control, if not are stewards of the customer-facing organization. They integrate capabilities across the enterprise, and they have the team, they have the resources, they have the expertise to really drive the impact that customer centricity can. Your thoughts on percentages of these in organizations you've come across?
I would have to agree with you that the transformer role in the customer chief customer officer is really rare, which is unfortunate because of its impact in growing and scaling companies and well-established companies. Because as I mentioned earlier, the user experience is what differentiates organizations. And customers today, prospects today, have more data at their fingertips, and they have the ability to make other decisions, and they have choices, and they will speak with their wallets. And more often than not, they do. And so that transformer role, unfortunately, it is very rare. A lot of times I am seeing more of the partner. So, the partner bucket in the middle of this slide is the one that I see most often when it's a more mature organization. And in startups, it's really promising to see that influencer role be there from an early stage, very similarly to investing in operations, early stage, your series A, B sized, or even pre-funding sized companies, having those roles and those key functions already sort of slated out and a path to incorporate them into the broader picture is really promising that this company is thinking about their approach in what I'd call the right way, and really putting that emphasis from an early stage on the customer experience. So I'd like to see more of the transformer side, but for now, the partner role is one that needs to start speaking up a little bit more and owning some of this process.
I absolutely agree. So in switching gears to the key chief customer officer experience challenges, I love this quote by Brandon Dowdy Ernst, Chief Experience Officer at Smile Workshop. When you add experience to the equation, marketing spending becomes something much larger than just spending $1 to make $1. Now it's spending $1 to make a customer for a lifetime. And that's exactly what we're talking about, is really a customer for a lifetime. So Jen, I think you and I have come up with a list of about 10 of these things. Would love to take the audience through each one, and maybe I'll ask you to comment on one. You asked me to jump in the other ones.
Sure. Let's go.
So let's talk about a customer-centric culture. What does that mean to you? Why is it important? Why would anybody care?
Yeah, so a customer-centric culture really, I mean, a lot of companies say that they're customer first and they're customer-centric, but it's really putting that customer at the forefront of all processes. So when a customer has a problem, doing what is best for that customer is, and empowering your people to take care of your customer is really what that comes down to, instead of, well, they have a problem, this is what my playbook tells me to do, this is what I'm going to do, that may or may not benefit that customer. And so really reinforcing that those customers are your company's lifeline, and ensuring that everyone within the organization has the tools to give that customer a really valuable experience at every single touch point.
Yeah, and just a couple of data points on that one. I've always coached clients that your culture is a culmination of behaviors you're willing to tolerate. So when we talk about a customer-centric culture, does every department, does every team prioritize customer needs and expectations in their decision-making and in their actions? If not, this is the time to really elevate, really think about where and how to double down on really creating that customer-centric culture. Next, I know one that's near and dear to your heart, which is unifying the customer data and insights.
Yes, this is where your RevOps team and your operations functions can really help, is by removing the silos of data and really helping create that 360-degree view of the customer for every department, because each one of those touch points, be it support, marketing, sales, customer success, they all have insights that have a lens to them, and having that holistic view is really important to make sure that, again, at every touch point, you're able to be best informed about what that customer may be needing. And one of the things we've talked about is anticipating what they need in the future, so you're not always reactive. So maybe support has just solved a problem. The next step would be for customer success just to reach out maybe a week later of, we just closed a support ticket for you. How is it working? Is there anything else we can help with? And actually, again, providing that value instead of just being that point solution vendor. So, I mean, David, in what ways have you seen like the data really help in these roles?
It really is. You're seeing increasingly that customer data, and you and your team specialize in this, spread, as you mentioned, across multiple systems and departments. And CCOs are challenged in integrating and analyzing to really gain that holistic view. I often talk about, that you're the offensive coordinator that can see the entire field, not the quarterback, not the head coach that's right there on the sidelines. You've got to have that broader purview to really drive the customer journey and deliver that very personalized experience, which leads us to the next one, which is really enhancing that customer experience. I know you talk a lot about, CCOs consistently evaluating and improving the customer experience across all touch points. Talk about that a little bit more, and how that feedback, the analysis and best practice can really optimize processes, products, and services.
Sure. So, I mean, the CCO role is really marrying that post-sales experience with the marketing and education for that client or customer. And so ensuring that, again, the value that they're realizing now post-sale is what they were promised, and helping them see some of those quick wins, but then also ensuring that relationship is deepened along the way, and it's not only looked at renewal time, is really important. And so it's the CCO's role to work with marketing to create communication paths that will help that customer deepen the understanding of what the company does, not just what they were promised or what they just purchased. And so it is a marrying more of customer success as well as marketing.
Which leads us really nicely into the next one, which is aligning customer success, often forgotten after the fact function, with really the business objectives, which is how does customer-centric initiatives contribute to the overall of the business?
Well, and actually, I'd love to ask you this one, just because you've worked so well with the CROs and CMOs, like how are you seeing the CCOs actually integrate themselves into what CMOs and CROs are typically tasked with from a metrics perspective?
I got to tell you, my favorite CCOs are the ones that get out of the office and go on sales calls, go on customer visits. They go to trade shows and talk to people. They ask very candid questions about what are we doing well? Where are we coming up short? In the areas where we deliver value to your company, how else are you using others that perhaps we could deliver that for you? So what they're doing is they understand the strategy of the organization. They quickly get their finger on the pulse of how are we marketing to them? How are we selling to them? And are we ensuring that then we deliver, as you said it, we deliver the value that marketing promised, sales promised, customer success now delivers and has to deliver. And if we fall short in that, how do we make sure we stay in touch we proactively communicate with marketing and sales? So hopefully we don't embarrass ourselves by another marketing campaign of, have you seen what a great job we're doing? We're doing a great job. Have we mentioned what a great job we're doing? You should really benefit from the great job that we're doing. Or worse yet, the sales rep who calls and talks about renewal, completely oblivious to the challenges this client has had in just getting the damn thing to work, right? And really creating value from that environment. So no marketing organization wants to be laughed at because you're clearly clueless when you send out a campaign of how great job we're doing and you really aren't doing a great job. And no sales rep ever wants to be embarrassed when they call and they hear from a customer of, why can't you people get this right? And we haven't had this system work in weeks and months. And that highlights a complete disconnect between those three critical roles, three critical functions in the organization. And that always, to me, leads to lack of the leadership and collaboration across those three leaders.
I would agree. And that brings us to our next one really nicely, of driving customer retention and loyalty. Because if the customer is frustrated that they're not seeing the value that was promised and their problem is not being solved with your solution, they're not going to stay. And so one of the key things that we've talked about several times is ensuring that you're not reaching out to them just at renewal time. We've had this conversation many times that a well-known provider within the industry continues to reach out only when it's time for renewal, yet and it is a different person every single time. So there's no continuity in it whatsoever. And they only reach out when it's time to renew. But when you have a problem or you're trying to solve something, or you're just any sort of touch point at any point in the year, there's none, and you can't get a hold of somebody when you actually need someone. So David, I'd love your thoughts on ways that the CCO can really help drive that retention and loyalty.
Before we move on, number one, for our audience, we've internally have decided that we're going to part ways with this platform, with this provider in the industry. Jen, the other comment that I don't know if I shared with you or not, but I recently listened to their CEO, who was a guest on some panel, I kid you not, talk about how committed they are to their, I mean, you couldn't have been a more corporate, calm, PR scripted message for this guy. And I'm thinking you couldn't be more disconnected from what your real customers are experiencing because of exactly what you mentioned. And it goes back to that customer centricity, that customer. I think Bezos and Amazon leadership deeply believes in this idea of a customer obsession has to be said from the top. And if the CEO, if he or she is disconnected or is being fed a whole bunch of second and third tier information that is just disconnected from what's really happening, you don't have a customer centric culture. You don't have a prayer for that chief customer officer to be successful if the organization is not there, which again leads us to a really important next topic, which is you've got to at some point also navigate privacy and data security concerns. So Jen, talk about this for a minute and why increasingly this is such a huge topic.
Yeah, this topic is becoming forefront for many companies, especially domestically here in the United States. Internationally, it's been a topic for many years, and increasingly clients, prospects are wanting to know where their data is being stored, how is it being handled, and and they want to be able to not be tracked, and they don't want their information shared or sold. And so it's really important that organizations respect their clients and prospects' wishes and create the systems necessary to not only protect the data when they get it, because sharing that information is valuable in your database. A company's database is their number one asset, other than their internal people. But that data needs to be protected and stewarded in a way that's going to give your community, your prospects, your clients, reassurance that it's not going to be mishandled. And so it's really important because nobody wants to hear about a breach. Nobody wants to get spammed with things. And so just increasingly focusing on your data security is really important. And your ops team and your IT team are going to be instrumental in making sure that happens.
So we, as the audience hopefully can pick up, we're passionate about this topic and we can keep going for days, but we do want to get through this before midnight tonight. So 7 is adapting to changing customer behaviors and expectations. Again, this is an area where we're constantly seeing preferences, expectations, experiences evolve, and CCOs have to stay attuned to these changes to make sure the organization adapts its products, its services, its processes accordingly. I recently heard an executive talk about shifting, accelerated shifting of those preferences, and that the last experience really sets the tone for the next expectations. So organizations that do that effectively really set themselves apart. Jen, talk about leveraging.
Yeah. Sorry, on number 7, and it even goes into number 8, is the roles that I've seen create the most impact are your customer relationship marketing roles. And those roles could be housed in your customer success function, or as the title indicates, it could be in your marketing function. But those people in that role lead your customer advisory board. They lead your user groups, and they are constantly talking to your customers. They're the ones who also help manage your reference program. And so when you ask for references or customer quotes or case studies, those are the people who are creating all of that. And those people also have a really unique lens, and they gain the trust of these customers to have those really candid conversations. And so listening and asking the questions about what is it you're looking for and what are you expecting from us and from others in our space really helps take that feedback to your product team, to your marketing team, to get on the growth journey and growth map. And then leveraging technology to do that. You don't ever want to wear out your welcome with any of those people who are willing to speak on your behalf, who are your raving fans. And so that, again, that customer reference manager really can be instrumental in helping the sales and marketing organization adopt technologies that allow that reference to be managed at scale. and not wear out your welcome, and have ready access to those case studies and know who it is that we can connect prospects to at the various levels of the journey. And maybe it's a large enterprise deal and they want to talk to another large enterprise customer that's in their same space. Having a technology or a tool that could help them find that quickly will allow that deal to move forward and not be stalled. And so that customer reference manager, either in marketing or in customer success, wherever you choose to put it, can really be instrumental in both number 7 and 8.
Talent, again, Jen alluded to it, identifying talent, identifying the right type of talent. I've always believed customer success, customer experience, individuals have to come with a heart of service. So attracting, retaining, developing talent to support that customer-centric culture and initiatives becomes a CCO's a critical opportunity for them. You also want to build diverse teams with the right mix of skills that foster a culture of continuous learning, continuous growth and development. We're big fans of that. And then last but not least, and I think we've talked a lot, extensively about this as well, is really cross-functional collaboration. It's really going beyond the textbook of, well, I've got to work with other functions, to really delivering a great experience. You got to work closely with other departments, particularly marketing, sales, but also product development, operations, engineering, the delivery drivers, the installers, the folks in finance that issue the purchase orders and procurement. Every facet of the organization has to understand the only reason they have a job is because of those customers. And that customer centricity cannot be an afterthought. It has to be integrated across the entire organization. Jen, final thoughts on this 10 list of before we touch on metrics for a couple minutes?
Well, you've mentioned it earlier that the culture of customer centricity really is set from the top, and it's that tone that's across the board for every leader. And so ensuring that your finance team knows what it means to be customer centric, that they're not just sending out an invoice, like those key moments can also be really critical to the customer. And it's an opportunity for you to touch them in a really positive way that they can see that you value their business. And so it's not just let's just send this invoice and off it goes. Like each one of those moments, and while it may not appear at the onset to be customer facing or to be customer impacting, they really are. And so this chief customer role really needs to own every single one of those.
In our last few minutes, again, we're going to talk about, and just reiterate a couple of key topics, the critical handoff in those touchstone moments, once the deal is signed, the onboarding, and then a series of metrics, right? So like NPS and customer sat and QBRs and, these things, and who's involved and where does the growth come from, and who are the advocates become really, really important. In terms of we're also increasingly seeing more segmentation, more ABX, more the jobs to be done and the internal organizational alignment really meet at the center of this visual, which is that customer journey and this idea of micro moments. So every moment, every touch, we believe can either enhance your credibility, your reputation, and deepen that relationship, or it's going to dilute it. And there's some very definitive metrics that might be really useful. Jen and I are talking a lot about metrics. We're talking a lot about proactively measuring not just customer satisfaction, but churn, the customer effort score. That's an interesting one. Customer average time to resolution, first contact resolution, contract renewal rates, net promoter score, obviously. These are all critical metrics that we believe can unequivocally set a customer experience team and the leader apart from their peers and really set the organization apart from its competitors. Jen, any comments on these metrics?
Just that all metrics that we've spoken about in previous episodes, and even these metrics, they need to be at the forefront and on a dashboard that everybody is aware of, and they're all operating off of the same numbers. So having versions of the truth doesn't help anyone make intelligent decisions for the business. And so ensuring that at that high level, at that executive level dashboard, these metrics are included, not just your forecasts and revenue numbers, but all of these as well, to ensure that, again, that leadership level is setting the tone and they know with solid numbers what is exactly happening across the organization, and how are those customers being impacted.
So, and this is what our business is focused on. So from our growth strategy, talking about this, facilitating salon sessions, strategy visualization to tell this customer experience journey, to a RevOps practice that Jen and her team run, including we're really excited to partner with a company called Versalytics and building a RevOps scorecard where we can actually measure the maturity of your journey and how well you're doing in this customer centricity, to a BizOps practice that really dives deep into some of these metrics and really creates real-time dashboards for your various systems. This is what we're focused on in really bringing that end-to-end customer experience to life across the organization in processes, capabilities, and tech stack. So with that, Jen, I'm going to give you final thoughts on this topic, but also this mini series.
Yeah, so this topic, we are very passionate about it because that customer centricity is really important for every business. And focusing on that and being intentional with that is really what's going to set your organization apart. And just because you're doing something today doesn't mean you can make shifts and make improvements to how you deal with your customers in the future. So even just small changes, start focusing on one aspect of this journey and make adjustments, and then continue making improvements along the way, could be very impactful for your business. And just this mini series in general, like across all three functions, the CRO, CMO, and CCO, really it's that three-legged stool, and it's that collaboration that these three functions need to operate with to grow and scale any organization to future success.
So on that note, my name is David Noor. You've been listening to Jen Kors. My partner and I talk about the critical experience challenges for chief customer officers as part of the mini series. This is our Intelligent Growth live stream on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We hope you'll continue to join us each Tuesday at noon Eastern for live sessions. Otherwise, you're welcome to watch the recording. We also repurpose these into articles and podcasts wherever you consume podcasts. So we hope to see you again in that next episode. Thanks, everybody. Take care and see you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.